The development of Andromeda was turbulent and troubling.
Mark Laidlaw, author of the famous Half-Life games.
Thank players for making Star Wars the system.
Scalebound! Cancel!
Oh, for fuck's sake!
Well, how do you follow that? The slight problem with 2017 being so heavily saturated with great video games is that it makes it quite a hard act to follow. Mind you, 2017 also saw the popularization of loot boxes and a whole host of other shitty gaming trends that we could do without, so it's not like it was the perfect year or anything. Though I'm starting to think that 2018 is going to be pretty fun because there's a huge amount of interesting games on the way and Nintendo are selling cardboard now, so things are looking tasty. My previous experiences of making hypothetical videos like these have led me to assume that games we barely know anything about might be good, and that's indeed the level of optimism I want to take into the new year, but only for games that we have a bit of info on. So, there's apparently a new Pokemon game coming, and Metroid Prime 4 has a name, but I need something more substantial to talk about. Not gonna touch anything about Kingdom Hearts 3 either. Supposedly it is coming out this year, but I don't even think I'll believe it when I see it. That game is something else. I prefer my comfort zone, it's very comfy over here. The Nintendo Switch's first year was great to the point where most of the confidence in Nintendo that had been lost over the Wii U era started to build up again with investors, fans, and other developers. The sheer number of ports that ended up on the Switch in 2017 is a testament to how much faith companies like Bethesda and Rockstar have in the console, and putting games like Skyrim and LA Noire on there could just be a means of testing the waters. This is especially encouraging because it has persuaded the insane asylum that is Grasshopper manufacture to make a new No More Heroes game for the Switch after an 8-year and distinctly Wii U-sized gap since the last one. Goichi Suda's back, and he hasn't made a significant video game in a few years. That is dangerous. But again, like with the ports of Skyrim and Doom, you can see Travis Strikes Again as a low-risk first attempt at getting some software in the Switch's library. That might be why the latest No More Heroes game is less of a direct sequel to Desperate Struggle and more of a crazed spin-off that is due to feature Travis Touchdown fighting his way through a whole host of indie games like Hotline Miami and Shovel Knight. That in itself is a pretty insane setup, but Suda51 is such a big fan of the Switch's Joy-Cons and their motion controls that apparently Travis Strikes Again can be played using just one of them. That to me sounds like an unnecessary restriction to place on yourself, but if it allows for the kind of wacky gameplay that gets that man off, then I'll find some other time to complain. Probably when the Hotline Miami level is really fucking hard. Don't give me a laser sword! Those guys have guns! I recently downloaded the Switch port of Super Meat Boy because I realized over Christmas that I didn't have enough self-loathing in my life, but to my surprise, I found that my previous experiences had set me up in a way so that I could enjoy the little things that make this game so much fun. I feel like I've talked about it a lot over the years, so I won't focus so much on that, but the Steam version comes with a level editor, which is all you can really rely on once you've beaten the standard game into submission. I reckon it's high time we had a sequel. Team Meat seemed to agree. You know, everyone last year was comparing things to Dark Souls, even though there's a very large number of other video games that make for far more accurate comparisons. Well, when I look at Super Meat Boy Forever, which is the sequel to Super Meat Boy, I can't help but see comparisons to Cuphead. You know? What goes around comes back around and punches you in the face. And not just because they share the common trait of being kind of difficult. If you were to compare Cuphead with the original Super Meat Boy, you'd have a hard time finding many similarities at all because they approach difficulty in completely different ways. I don't really know too much about Super Meat Boy Forever, but the ways in which you traverse complicated levels fraught with danger and saw blades reminds me a lot of the run-and-gun levels from Cuphead. Certainly that might go some way towards appeasing the concerns I have over this new format, considering that I enjoyed the short encounter more densely complex challenges from Super Meat Boy. I'm also not so sure of the graphics, but I guess Team Meat needed at least a few things that will separate Super Meat Boy forever from the original. Though that's happening regardless because series co-creator Edmund McMillan is not involved in any way since he's off making other weird things, so there's plenty of risk involved, but I look forward to it all the same. As long as it's kept those crazy replays after you beat a level that show how many times you died, I'm game. At least until it gets stupid. Successful indie games that take inspiration from genres that have maybe gone out of fashion over the years have the potential to bring those genres back into the public eye. Think how that works for a second. If I make a game that pays homage to Zombies Ate My Neighbors and it becomes a critical and commercial hit that changes the gaming climate as we know it, then you might end up seeing more games like it. Maybe even a sequel to Zombies Ate My Neighbors. It is very much wishful thinking. This hasn't happened a lot in recent times, but Mighty No. 9 famously tried to revive Mega Man in its own unique, horrendously terrible way. And this actually worked in the end? Okay, fine, whatever, let's go. So Capcom have remembered that Mega Man exists, which is always encouraging, but I'd love to know if this game only entered development as a reaction to Keiji Inafune and his team of bumbling idiots crapping out some shitty knockoff. Because it's like Mega Man's honor has been challenged, or that he has to defend his name and rebuild his reputation from the ground up. Actually, that sounds far-fetched, but if any part of Mega Man 11's story plays out like that, then holy shit. We've only got the announcement trailer to go on, but it seems like they've moved to using 3D models instead of sprite work, which I think looks pretty good and also brings up more comparisons to Mighty No. 9. I think there will be this lingering doubt over whether or not Mega Man 11 can reignite the franchise, but the trailer didn't include any pizza explosions or anime fans on prom night, so I think things are immediately looking promising. Though this is Capcom, they're fully capable of fucking it up. Just please don't. I'm a big fan of thinking that gaming comes in cycles, if just because, you know, life comes in cycles. It's maybe a bit early in the year to get philosophical, but when you're in a good place, you gotta make the most of it. I can't think of too many franchises in as good a place as Kirby right now, and he's making the most of it. You could probably extend that out and say that most of Nintendo's IPs are doing as well, if not better, than they've ever done for popularity and sales figures, but Kirby really sticks out for me because it hasn't had to rely on the Switch. For the last couple of years, Kirby has kept a remarkable level of consistency wherever he's ended up and with whatever gimmick has been deployed in his games. And I can say with some confidence that Kirby has never been this reliably good. Really, it's about time he was put on the Switch and allowed to spread his wings a bit. It's worked for everyone else. My enthusiasm for Kirby Star Allies has been a bit of a slow burner. Nintendo announced it at E3 last year, which was kind of overshadowed by other things like Pokemon for the Switch and Metroid Prime 4 and Rocket League and just generally Super Mario Odyssey. But then Nintendo revealed more information in a direct a few months later, which contained a very swole looking King Dedede and all the reactions that came from that. I came prepared this time. It seems to be harkening back to Return to Dreamland's format of 4-player co-op, while also taking a few ideas from Squeak Squad, like the combining of copy abilities to create curling stone Kirby and other weird shit. More importantly, the success of the 3DS Kirby games has shown that HAL Labs are more than capable of creating a compelling video game on a handheld. They've just got more processing power to play with this time. Maybe we could get a fully three-dimensional Kirby game for the Switch in the future if Star Allies sells well. Like, not Super Mario Odyssey, but potentially something equally open-ended and charming? I'd just like more Kirby in my life, that's all. Perhaps unlike you, I look forward to controversial games coming out, if just because you finally get to play the game and not just read news articles about the drama surrounding the game. There was a brief bit of controversy surrounding Detroit Become Human back in October when the latest trailer for the game featured a playable android put into a domestic abuse situation where you can intervene and save the little girl in question. Alternatively, as part of the game's freedom of choice, you can stand by and let her father beat her to death. It's a grim subject and not really something that's going to appeal to everyone, but I don't think there's anything wrong with covering it in a video game, especially portraying it as the barbaric act that it is. The alternative is we spend the rest of time only making video games about happy sunshine rainbow candy and pretend that things like domestic abuse don't exist. That might be more damaging. Anyway, Detroit Become Human looks interesting. It's a David Cage game, which means the pretense is strong and it might well think that it's smarter than you, but that man does have a habit of making games that have choices with real consequences to them. That seems to be the main focus of all the trailers that demonstrate that this game isn't going to stop just because you made the wrong decision, and is more than happy to kill characters off at the drop of a hat. From the outset, it seems like more of Heavy Rain and Beyond Two Souls, which I'm sure will rile up people who want more gaming in their game. But I kinda like those games, so I'm personally looking forward to it. It might get a bit deep at points, but I've played Nier Automata. I can handle androids musing about sentience and freedom, just so long as there's plenty of butts as well. I'm not sure you can really overstate what a great job the Batman Arkham series did for superhero video games. Before, you had to look pretty hard to find a handful of examples that weren't just cashing in on the name or using the movie tie-in to do most of the work for them. Then Rocksteady showed the world the right way to do it, with so much respect and reverence given to the property. I would reason that without the Arkham games being so successful, there'd be no chance in hell of Marvel giving Spider-Man over to Insomniac to play with. You want Peter Parker to become that annoying piece of shit from Sunset Overdrive? Can't be much worse than that other Spider-Man game. My primary and I suppose my only real concern with the new Spider-Man game is how large a percentage of the slick dynamic gameplay has been scripted to look fancy for the trailer. Linking it back to the Arkham games isn't actually stretching too far, since the only bit of uncut gameplay we've seen puts an emphasis on stealth takedowns and using the environment to your advantage, as well as what looks like an upgraded version of the combat system that defined the Batman games. At least this time around, Spider-Man leaping and sliding all over the place is more convincing than someone as jacked as Batman doing the same. I don't know, this will probably be pretty great, I just don't want to get too overhyped. I've been burned before. If it turns out to be good, the new Spider-Man game will be going up against Spider-Man 2 from 2004, and that game has aged really well. Like, it's kind of open world, but you can progress the story if you like, but you can also just sling webs around buildings and explore the city and have fun in the overworld, like something like that with better graphics and some tweaks and refinements. I think that'll go down quite well. Having 2 weeks off at the start of January has plenty of benefits. For one, it allows me to rest my brain and prepare for making more videos for you wonderful people, which usually takes the form of wading through my comically large backlog. But it also gives the gaming industry time to get its shit together. Not a lot happens in January because marketing departments focus on getting a game out for Christmas, so instead you make do with a handful of indie games and replaying Breath of the Wild without a shirt. But the big hitters are coming. In fact, one is coming next Friday. Can you have a great deal of anticipation for a game that comes out in 5 days? You're damn right you can! Generally speaking, I'm not the biggest fan of Monster Hunter games, but only because I haven't really played a lot of them. What I am a big fan of is open world action games where you take down giant creatures, sometimes with other players in an online setting, and work your way towards upgrading your gear and your character so you can kick the shit out of even larger monsters. What I've heard about Monster Hunter World is that it's gonna do most of that. Japan are playing catch up with the open world trend, but from what I've seen from other titles, they seem to be more capable of filling the space with shit to do than Western developers, so I expect to have lots of things to kill next week. Supposedly they're adding stealth, which I don't think was in the other games, but do you really need stealth when you're taking down giant dinosaurs? They don't fucking care. Unless it's less like Shadow of the Colossus and more like angry monsters stomping around. That's pretty simple, I can buy into that. In the last couple of months of 2017, I was able to upgrade my internet beyond mere fruits and vegetables and into something that actually fucking works kinda well. They actually gave us a router and everything, it's pretty cool. The upshot is that I can now play video games online without experiencing ping times measured in whole seconds. And that completely changes how I view the prospective lineup of games for 2018. Suddenly, multiplayer-only games are actually something I care about now, and that's just as well because I probably would have passed up Sea of Thieves without a moment's hesitation if it came out last year. What, some pirate game where you eat whole bananas without peeling them? You're quite right, that does sound fun. I took part in the technical alpha late last year, and while it was naturally a little rough around the edges, I was surprised how much fun I had. The Wind Waker fan in me looks at all this ocean and thinks, yeah, I'd quite like to sail a ship to various islands and outposts and shoot skeletons so you can pick up treasure and get eaten by sharks. And half of that wasn't even available in the Zelda games, so Rare's latest outing that doesn't involve Kinect or building Lego cars has piqued my interest in a major way. The beta is starting up fairly soon, and I heard they might be adding a Kraken into the game. I mean, fuck me, right? A common theme from last year's video on this same topic was my over-exuberance with the release dates of certain video games. Obviously, the tiniest amount of hindsight can tell you that The Last of Us Part 2 did not come out in 2017, and neither did the Final Fantasy VII remake, but I only thought they would because of, like, one publication giving them a 2017 release date. That's kind of the problem with this caliber of speculation. I basically have no fucking idea. But sources close to home are usually pretty accurate. Hideo Kojima has gone on record for saying that Death Stranding will be out before 2019, so 2018. Because that's the year that the movie Akira was set in, and somehow that's relevant. I don't know, I think we're all just scratching around, trying to work out what's going on. At the time of writing this, we've seen bits and pieces from Death Stranding, but nothing concrete to really nail down what this game is, and in what ways it's going to enrich our lives. Apparently, it's some kind of action game where dying sends you to some kind of creepy upside-down water world where you can probably find Guillermo del Toro and Mads Mikkelsen chilling out with their babies. But I think regardless of what kind of game it is, it should be high on quality and full of the little quirks that characterize a Hideo Kojima game. That actually segues into my only real concern with Death Stranding. Kojima's complete creative freedom. Giving his team a new IP to play with and no longer having Konami lurking in the background should benefit everyone involved, but I worry about what kind of ridiculous self-indulgent madness we're going to end up with at the end. Kojima in particular tends to thrive when he's writing a game in tandem with someone else who will be more than happy to tell him that he's full of shit. With any luck, all of this will make sense nearer the time. I do not envy that explanation though. We're getting to the stage now where every new release from Rockstar Games is a big event. They happen so far apart from one another that we have plenty of time to work ourselves up into a frenzy before we're rewarded with a game that goes quite a long way towards justifying the excitement. I remember the anticipation surrounding Grand Theft Auto 5 before it came out, and it seemed like it was reaching a level that the game itself couldn't possibly match, but you know, it kind of did in the end. That was 5 years ago, and Rockstar haven't made a lot since. Large parts of the internet are clamoring for GTA 6, which is very unlikely for now, but we'll have something way more interesting to play with this year. I think I just like the Wild West setting of Red Dead Redemption a bit more than modern day reality. I put so many hours into this game, and the thought of a sequel, it's more like a prequel, that has every chance of having the same attention to detail and cinematic vistas and perfect sound design is something that justifies a notably large amount of excitement. Rockstar were able to tweet one still image of a stylish sunset and have the world lose their minds over it. They know what they have here, and they know how to use it. Now I'm just hoping that they don't abuse it. With the games industry beginning to look towards anything that can squeeze more money out of a consumer, it would be the saddest story of the year if any part of Red Dead Redemption 2 is tainted by microtransactions or loot boxes or overpriced DLC. Especially that last one, since the first game had Undead Nightmare, which was practically like a brand new game but priced like a simple add-on. Red Dead Online has already been confirmed, so I'm praying that Rockstar don't mimic their model in GTA Online and fill it full of additional paid content. We have a beautifully wonderful thing here. Let's at least try not to ruin it. This is RabbidLuigi, and I realised that my track record for predicting the quality of video games in this kind of format is mixed, since the last two games that I was most excited for the last 2 years were No Man's Sky and A Breath of the Wild. But Red Dead Redemption 2 feels more like a safe bet, helped out by the fact there's an 8-year gap since the first one. That is a long time to be thinking of new ideas. Doesn't feel like they're rushing this one out.